July 1944. A grand hotel in New Hampshire fills with delegates from 44 nations. War still rages overseas. Inside, they try to stop the next economic war before it begins. For 21 days they design a money order for the world. The winner at the end is the US dollar at $35 per ounce of gold. That choice still shapes your prices, your job, and your travel today. Stay with me. The 1930s were the warning. Tariffs went up. Exchange rates yo-yoed. Countries devalued to steal demand from each other. Trade collapsed and unemployment exploded. Leaders vowed never again. To architects drove the new plan. John Maynard Keynes came from a battered Britain. He wanted a global currency he called the Bancor and a powerful clearing union. Harry Dexter White came from a rising United States. He wanted a dollar anchored to gold and a system that ran through Washington. The United States held most of the world's official gold and most of the world's factories. White had leverage, and he used it. The deal at Bretton Woods was a compromise with teeth. Every country fixed its currency to the dollar at a declared par value. The United States promised to convert dollars held by foreign central banks into gold at $35 per ounce. Exchange rates could move inside a tiny band day to day. If a rate became misaligned, a country could request an official devaluation or revaluation. The system was fixed but adjustable. To new institutions enforced the peace. The International Monetary Fund would lend short-term dollars when countries faced a balance of payments crunch. Members paid in quotas which set their voting power and borrowing limits. The International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, later called the World Bank, would finance long-term rebuilding and development. Together, they were the shock absorbers for trade. There was one more quiet rule that mattered. Countries could use capital controls to keep hot money from blasting through their exchange rates. In plain English, you could buy and sell goods and services across borders with stable prices. You could not necessarily move giant piles of investment capital overnight. Stability first, speed later. The system launched after the war with training wheels. In 1946, the institutions opened their doors. In 1949, several currencies devalued to reflect reality on the ground. By 1958, the major European economies declared current account convertibility. Trade could flow freely, and the machine was finally humming. The early years had a strange problem called the dollar shortage. The world needed dollars to buy American goods and rebuild. There were not enough dollars to go around. The Marshall Plan and U.S. military spending abroad supplied cash where loans could not. Factories restarted. Ships sailed. Confidence grew. Then a different problem emerged, and it had a name. Economist Robert Triffin called it the Triffin Dilemma. To supply the world with safe dollars, the United States had to run deficits. But large and persistent deficits would eventually make the world doubt the dollar's promise to convert to gold. Provide to few dollars and trade starves. Provide to many dollars and confidence cracks. This was the fatal tension built into the design. By the 1960s, the tension was visible. U.S. spending rose with the Vietnam War and the Great Society. Foreign central banks accumulated dollars faster than U.S. gold reserves grew. A London gold pool of central banks tried to peg the gold price at 35 by selling into the market. Speculators bought every ounce they could. A two-tier market emerged, one official and one private. Trust was slipping. In August 1971, President Nixon closed the gold window. Dollars held by foreign central banks would no longer convert into gold. The promise at the heart of Bretton Woods ended in a single announcement. After a brief attempt to patch, the system currencies began to float. By 1973, the fixed exchange rate era was over. Yet the dollar remained on the throne. Why? Because the network it had built was massive. Trade contracts were written in dollars. Commodities were priced in dollars. U.S. Treasury bonds offered deep, liquid, rule-bound markets that everyone could use. The institutions born at Bretton Woods kept working in the New World. Rules changed. The plumbing stayed. What did that crown give America? It lowered borrowing costs for the U.S. government through steady demand for treasuries. It made global finance run through dollar rails that U.S. regulators could influence. It gave U.S. consumers cheaper imports when the dollar was strong. It gave U.S. exporters a headwind when the dollar soared and a tailwind when it fell. Power came with trade-offs. Here is how that old deal still touches your wallet. When the Federal Reserve raises rates, the dollar often strengthens. A stronger dollar can push down import prices and hold down goods inflation. It can also pressure U.S. multinationals that earn abroad. When the dollar weakens, commodity prices and travel abroad can jump in dollar terms. Exchange rates never sleep. They tug on your budget even when you are not looking. Watch these signals like a pro. Rate gaps between the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank or the Bank of Japan. Current account balances that show whether the U.S. is importing far more than it exports. Policy language that hints at cooperation or conflict over currencies. When leaders talk in unison, markets often move together. When they talk past each other, volatility rises. If you invest globally, decide on currency risk on purpose. Unhedged, international funds rise when foreign stocks rise and the dollar weakens. They fall harder when the dollar strengthens. Hedged funds strip out that currency swing for a fee. Pick the tool that fits your goal, not the one your broker defaulted to. Businesses can copy one simple rule. Price long contracts in the currency of your costs, not just your sales. If you buy inputs in dollars, it is safer to invoice in dollars. If you pay workers and suppliers in euros, consider a hedge. Bretton Woods promised stable rates so firms could plan. Floating rates demand planning of a different kind. A short timeline helps you remember. Great Depression currency wars teach the lesson. July 1940 for Bretton Woods writes the rules. Late 1940s to 1950s, the dollar shortage fades as aid and trade flow. 1960s, the Triffin dilemma bites and gold drains. August 1971, the gold window closes. 1973, major currencies float. The dollar still anchors global finance through depth and habit. Here is a clean mental model. Bretton Woods crowned the dollar with gold. Floating rates crowned the dollar with network effects. First the promise, then the habit. Both are powerful. 3 takeaways you can use. A strong dollar helps your imports and travel and can pinch your foreign stocks. A weak Dollar helps exporters and commodity funds and can raise your grocery and gas bills. If you invest abroad, decide whether you want currency swings or a hedge and stick to a plan. If you want the next chapter, where the crown slipped off the gold peg and the world learned to float, subscribe now.